Okay, let's unpack this. Today, our mission is to do a massive deep dive comparing two vastly different global snapshots. The world of 1991, right when the Cold War officially ended, and the world of 2025, right now.
And we're talking about just a single generation of change.
Exactly. But the analysis suggests the planet is, fundamentally unrecognizable in almost every way.
It's a compelling project. For you, the goal isn't just to list a bunch of events, but to really get the deep structural shifts that happen in just 34 years.
Right.
We're basically tracking how the whole global operating system, from trade rules to, how wars are fought, was completely rewritten.
Yeah, that's it perfectly. So we're going to hit 5 key areas from the source material: geopolitics, the huge shift in the global economy; the fragmentation of our international institutions; the revolutionary impact of technology; and finally, this new nature of ideology and the global war of narratives.
A lot to cover.
It is. Let's start with the big map changes. Geopolitics.
Let's do it.
The memory of 1991, it's just defined by the collapse of the Soviet Union, right? The dissolution of the Warsaw Pact.
Yeah.
And you look back and you remember that that heady, optimistic feeling, that belief in the end of history.
Triumph of Western liberalism,
Right.
supposedly. But that optimism was, well, it was challenged almost immediately.
Oh, absolutely. History didn't end. It just fragmented. It became far, far less predictable.
So what happened?
The world immediately saw local conflicts just flare up. Within months, you had the U.S.-led coalition liberating Kuwait in the Gulf War.
Right.
And almost at the same time, right in the heart of Europe, the bloody Balkan Wars were kicking off with the breakup of Yugoslavia.
That's such a crucial point. It wasn't peace. It was just chaos replacing structure.
Huh.
And the sources also remind us that conflicts were erupting all over the former Soviet space Transcaucasia, Central Asia.
Proving that the stability before was really just an illusion. It was only maintained by that rigid bipolar structure. So let's fast forward. 2025. The conflict landscape is unrecognizable, but the tension level is. Arguably, it's even higher.
I'd say so. The primary flashpoint is obviously the Russia-Ukraine war, which had been going on since 2022. And the analysis notes that by 2025, Russian forces have made specific military gains, which is fundamentally reshaping European security.
And then you have the constant instability in the Middle East, the Israel-Hamas war in Gaza, and these ongoing confrontations between Israel and Iran.
But we also see new vectors of instability, don't we?
We do. Prolonged crises in Sudan since 2023, and these persistent conflicts across the African Sahel region, Somalia, Myanmar, the list goes on.
And we can't ignore the risk of major power friction. Taiwan is specifically named as a moderate risk for escalation, one involving the U.S. and China.
And if you look at the alliances, that's where you see the clearest evidence of the structural change.
Oh, absolutely.
The expansion of NATO is just staggering. In 1991, it had, 16 members?
16. By 2025, it's doubled to 32 countries. It's pulled in most of Eastern Europe and the Baltics. A very clear reaction to this new geopolitical reality.
And while that Western alliance grew stronger, the post-Soviet structure, the CIS, the Commonwealth of Independent States, its political influence just noticeably cratered.
It shrank from 12 original republics down to, 9 active members? Something like that.
And what steps into that vacuum?
The rise of alternative non-Western structures. This is what confirms the whole transition to multipolarity.
Exactly. BRICS.
Precisely. The BRICS group, which was originally just Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, it expanded to 10 members by 2025. And this isn't just an economic club anymore.
No, it's a political voice.
It's a prominent political voice for the global South, offering an alternative vision to the Western consensus. And alongside that, you've got the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, the SKO, strengthening its position across Eurasia.
So the synthesis here is pretty compelling. 1991 was the end of a simple bipolar world, which immediately gave way to localized, messy conflicts.
Right.
2025 is defined by a clear, very complicated multipolarity. You have competition among several major centers of power, and, critically, a perceived increase in the risk of a large-scale war involving those major powers.
And that new geopolitical map has, as you'd expect, fundamentally redrawn the economic landscape.
100%.
If 1991 was all about clear U.S. economic hegemony, globalization just starting under GATT, 2025 is polycentric.
The U.S. is still number 1, sure, but China is firmly established as number 2, and it's closing that gap fast.
But it's more than just a two-player game now.
Oh, definitely. The EU is a formidable bloc of 27 nations, and you have India growing incredibly fast, becoming a key global player in its own right.
What I find really fascinating in the sources is this paradox. The economy is somehow more globalized because of technology,
Right.
but at the same time, it's more aggressively segmented by geography and politics.
We're seeing the formation of these giant, almost impenetrable regional economic blocs. You mentioned the EU, but look at Asia. RCEP, the Comprehensive Regional Economic Partnership, that brings together 15 Asian countries.
And that single block accounts for nearly one-third of global GDP. That's not just another trade deal. It's a whole new center of economic gravity, dictating its own terms, its own supply chains.
And we also have the TPP and the USMCA, which replaced NAFTA in North America.
But this transition wasn't smooth, was it? We've had 3 decades of massive economic shocks.
You're right, the Asian crisis in '97, the devastating global financial crisis of 2008 that started in the U.S.
Then the COVID-19 supply chain shock in 2020 and the 2022 energy crisis.
So after all that turbulence, what was the central lesson learned?
The central lesson was the extreme risk of relying on these highly efficient, hyper-centralized global supply chains. When the world stops, efficiency becomes fragility.
Right.
So the new focus is on resilience, diversification, regionalization, and the buzzword you hear everywhere, friendshoring.
Moving your production to politically reliable friendly nations, which means geopolitics is now openly driving economic decisions. That's a huge reversal from the '90s model.
And it normalizes economic warfare, trade wars like the U.S.-China tariffs from 2018 to 2020, and sanctions. They've gone from being rare diplomatic tools to standard, powerful economic weapons.
The sanctions against major energy producers, Russia, Iran, Venezuela, have completely flipped energy geopolitics. We're seeing this urgent rerouting of energy, Russian oil just heading east to China and India.
And here's a curious little detail that shows you just how sticky these economic systems are. Despite all the embargoes, all the political hostility, Europe continues to import significant Russian fuel, especially liquefied natural gas, even into 2025. It just shows that supply chains, infrastructure, once they're built, they're incredibly hard to shut down overnight, no matter what the political will is.
So if the economic world is fragmenting like this, how are the international institutions holding up? I mean, in '91, there was this genuine hope that the UN would be the global arbiter of peace. What happened?
Well, the UN structure, especially the Security Council, is largely unchanged. But its effectiveness is often paralyzed.
The veto power.
The veto power, combined with these deep contradictions between the major powers, it just constantly blocks any meaningful intervention or, resolution of conflicts. It's stagnation at the very top.
And you contrast that stagnation with the dynamic growth of the Western alliances we mentioned. NATO doubling in size, the EU transforming from a trade body into this powerful union.
Albeit without the UK now, which is a key detail.
Right. And then you have the core of global trade governance, the WTO. It replaced GATE in '95, has 166 members, but it's severely struggling.
Yeah, the Doha round of negotiations is basically deadlocked, and its critical appellate body, the part that resolves disputes, is paralyzed.
And the analysis points directly at the U.S. position as a key reason for that paralysis. So are we seeing these traditional Western-led institutions struggle because one of the key Western powers now prefers bilateral deals over messy global consensus?
That's exactly what the trend suggests. And if you connect this to the bigger picture, the power structure of that old system is being diluted by new, non-Western platforms where the Global South has a much louder voice.
And financial leverage.
And crucially, financial leverage. Think about the G20, which really became the dominant body for crisis coordination after 2008.
Right.
And more importantly, you have the rise of powerful non-Western financial alternatives. The China-backed Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank, the AIIB.
And the BRICS New Development Bank.
Exactly. These give developing nations real alternatives to the IMF and World Bank, which historically were dominated by Western interests.
So the old institutions survive, but their influence is fragmented. The old rulemakers are struggling, and these new, complicated centers of power are demanding a seat at the table. The whole picture is just far messier than it was 30 years ago.
And that fragmentation links directly to the transformation of the major players themselves.
Let's get into that. Let's look at Russia first. In 1991, it was in a deep existential crisis. Its GDP was cut nearly in half during the 1990s. An economic catastrophe.
Total catastrophe. The 2000s saw a massive economic rebound driven by soaring oil and gas prices, which peaked around 2013.
But then
But then post-2014, and especially post-2022, Russia faced the most severe isolation and sanctions we've seen since the height of the Cold War.
Yet by 2025, the analysis shows Russia is still a major energy supplier and arms exporter. It successfully reoriented its trade flows east to China and India.
It has survived the initial economic shocks, yes, but the sources are very clear. It is technologically cut off from the West, which means long-term development is constrained and energy security is a global priority because of that massive reorientation.
Now turning to the USA, 1991 was its moment of triumph. The Cold War victor, the indispensable nation. It dominated the 90s with operations like Desert Storm.
But the 2000s brought some severe challenges. 9/11 fundamentally changed its security focus, followed by those costly, protracted wars in Afghanistan and Iraq.
And then the 2008 financial crisis that started right on Wall Street.
So by 2025, the U.S. is still the #1 economy and military, for sure, but its share of global GDP has shrunk.
And what stands out as its primary challenge today?
The rivalry with China. It's an all-encompassing competition, economic, geopolitical, and most critically, technological, especially over semiconductors and advanced microchips.
Right, the chip wars.
The chip wars. And while the U.S. still holds the lead in areas like advanced AI, the data shows the U.S. had 40 significant AI models in 2024, compared to 15 for China. The era of singular U.S. leadership is over.
Which brings us to China. The sources single out the transformation of China as the single most significant geopolitical change in this whole 30-year period.
Without a doubt.
In 1991, its role was modest. Deng Xiaoping's reforms were just starting to gain momentum.
It change is just breathtaking. China became the world's second-largest economy, the workshop of the world. It joined the WTO, and it launched that massive global infrastructure project, the Belt and Road Initiative, the BRI.
And by 2025, their ambition is just openly stated. Pursuing clear superpower status, building a modern blue water navy, and asserting dominance, especially in the South China Sea.
Technologically, Beijing is intensely focused on achieving technological sovereignty.
Meaning independence.
Independence from Western control, especially in chips and core systems. It's actively competing in AI, leading in some areas like research publications and patents. This is a state that maintains strict domestic control while forming a powerful alternative pole of influence internationally, anchored by that partnership with Russia and its leadership in BRICS and the SPO.
Geopolitics and economics are huge, but the digital revolution is where the shift feels most immediate for you, the listener.
Oh, absolutely.
In 1991, the internet was a novelty, something for research institutions. The World Wide Web only really emerged around 93. Mobile phones were bricks, and satellites belonged to governments.
What a difference 30 years makes. We are in a total revolution dominated by artificial intelligence. We talked about the U.S.-China race, but the scale of investment is just staggering. The U.S. alone spent $109 billion on AI in 2024.
Wow.
And AI is now embedded in everything: trade, medicine, manufacturing, transport.
But with that level of interconnection comes exponential vulnerability. Cybersecurity is now a true strategic battlefield between states. It's not just about stealing credit card numbers anymore.
That's right. Cyber attacks are now used to target critical infrastructure. Look at the real-world examples: the WannaCry virus in 2017 or the Colonial Pipeline hack in the U.S. in 2021.
Which caused gas shortages all along the coast.
Exactly. Espionage is now standard practice. This is the definition of a new invisible war that can cripple a nation without firing a single shot.
And the information ecosystem itself is utterly transformed. Mobile connectivity is basic infrastructure. Social media didn't exist in 1991, and now it completely dominates public discourse.
For billions of people, it is the primary source of news. The sources cite statistics showing just how fast this happened in the U.S. Only 4% got their news from social media in 2015.
4%.
By 2025, that figure jumped to 34%.
In just 10 years. That acceleration fundamentally changes public awareness, democratic stability, everything. And then you add the commercialization of space. We've gone from dozens of government satellites to thousands run by private companies.
Starlink alone had nearly 9,000 satellites in orbit by October 2025.
It's incredible.
So the synthesis here is really clear. The world is more technologically transparent than it has ever been, yet it is simultaneously far more vulnerable to informational attacks. And think about this. Half the global population now consumes news primarily through fast-moving video and social media feeds.
Let's pull all this together and look at ideology. The great illusion of 1991 was that with the fall of communism, the classic ideological battle, capitalism versus communism, was just over.
That illusion is completely shattered.
Right.
Ideological conflict is still absolutely central, but it's changed its form.
So what's the new divide?
The conflict is now defined by liberal democracies, primarily the West, facing off against alternative models. Whether you want to call it authoritarian capitalism, like China's model, or just entrenched authoritarian regimes.
And what are they actually fighting over? It seems less about abstract Marxist dogma.
And more about concrete national interests, influence, and resources. All of it wrapped up in this compelling rhetoric about protecting traditional values or asserting a special national path. Nationalist rhetoric, especially, is highly active everywhere.
And because of the digital revolution we just talked about, this entire conflict has moved online.
We are deep in an era of global informational war. It's a relentless fight for narratives.
And the tools are standard now. Digital propaganda, state-sponsored fake news, highly sophisticated influence campaigns using social media, bot networks, hacking.
And this informational environment has had a profound impact on public perception. A 2025 survey cited in the sources showed that over 80% of people in many countries now see fake news as a major problem.
80%.
This threat is so pervasive that the World Economic Forum named disinformation the single main short-term risk for the world. That's just astonishing.
The practical clash then centers on these fundamental values: democracy, free speech, and human rights on one side, versus strict state power, information control, and order on the other.
Right. State propaganda in places like Russia and China promotes loyalty and a very specific worldview, and the West responds with counter-propaganda and sanctions against opposing state media.
Which leads to profound internal societal polarization.
So to summarize the ideological transformation, 1991 was a formal conflict between two established systems fought through traditional media and high-level diplomacy.
Right.
2025 is a constant, decentralized, and pervasive war of narratives that's diffused across the entire digital environment. A new Cold War fought directly on our smartphones and our social media feeds.
So what does this all mean? When we look back at this dramatic shift from 1991 to 2025, the world is technologically interconnected to a degree that was unimaginable a generation ago. And yet it is simultaneously more politically and economically fragmented. The simple, though very dangerous, structure of bipolarity has given way to this convoluted multipolar competition where the old rules just do not apply.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, we moved from the big break of the Cold War's end straight into a new epoch, one defined by deep uncertainty and multiple intertwined crises. Everything is faster, everything is more interconnected, and therefore everything is more sensitive.
A source of both extreme resilience and extreme vulnerability.
Exactly.
It's truly astonishing to reflect on the speed of that transformation. The rise of the internet, mobile tech, social media, they really acted as a massive black swan event that fundamentally reshaped everything in just 30 years.
They were the unexpected, high-impact disruptors of our time.
Which leads us to the final provocative question, one for you to mull over as you digest this deep dive. If these digital technologies acted as the black swan of the last 30 years, what lesser-known, non-digital technologies just emerging today? Not AI or commercial space, which are already major, but something entirely new, maybe in biotech or materials science or new energy fields, could be the next black swan that fundamentally overturns geopolitics, economics, and daily life by, say, 2055.
A fascinating future puzzle. The next deep dive starts today.
Indeed. Thank you for sharing these incredible sources and diving deep with us into the dramatic changes of the last generation.
My pleasure.
We'll catch you next time for the next deep dive.